Well, central to the whole challenge, the existential threat of climate change, the climate emergency on our planet is really faith. However you want to define it, everyone has their own personal faith. But let's sample the views of three representatives here in Glasgow. This, after Pope Francis gave in advance a 5-minute feeling of the concerns that he has. It happened to be to the BBC, and also the Archbishop of Canterbury here on the first day. Joining me is Sister Jayanti, welcome, who is UN representative for the Brahma Kumaris, a prominent role for women, and you are very much from Hyderabad. That's where you originated, in Sindh. We have Reverend Henrik Grape, welcome Reverend Grape, from the World Council of Churches, which is Protestant, and also Gopal Patel, welcome. You're founder and director of Bhumi Global, based on Hindu principles of environmental care. Well, all of you, the same question. How much do you think issues of faith and religion and the concerns of those you represent are really being accommodated and embraced here in Glasgow?
Well, to my understanding of faith is that that is the narrative of why we're here, why we're living here. And what we see, the climate emergency that you talked about, is something that we have to address as faith communities as well. Because from my faith, from the Christian faith, we have often seen ourselves as stewards. And I think we have to back down from being stewards. We have to understand that we are interdependent, living in the dependency of the ecosystem. We are not separate from nature, we are a part of nature, and that is something that we had to realize. So,
Gopal, let me come briefly to Gopal, if I may. What's your view?
I think everybody in the world has a belief and value system. And what we're here to do is remind people that this is an existential crisis, but it's a moral crisis, a theological crisis, and an ethical crisis.
Has the message got through yet?
It's getting through. If you see the speeches in the opening 2 days from the World Leaders Summit, there was a lot of emotion there that I don't think we've seen in previous years. So the message is definitely getting through. We have tens of thousands of people out on the streets right now marching, raising their voices, saying that this is an existential ethical crisis. And so the voice and message is definitely getting through.
But very quickly, I mean, do you think that anyone doesn't think that this is an existential crisis?
I think there are some people who don't think it's an existential crisis, or some people who don't care. And we're here to remind them we have to care. We have to care for each other.
Reverend Grape, you were nodding in agreement at that point. Yes, there are people. Now, let me go to Sister Jayanti from the Brahma Kumaris. What's your view about how much this is a faith issue?
I think that more and more people are recognizing that our own internal belief system is what is happening outside to us on an external level, which means that if I'm in a state of confusion inside, then what I'm doing to nature is also very, very confusing. And so we are seeing a backlash from nature. And I see that more and more people are understanding that when I have respect for myself and I respect humans and respect nature itself, then there's going to be harmony between humans and nature. And if we continue to destroy nature, it's going to be not possible for us to continue as a species.
Do you think that's fully understood? Because, you know, it was made very clear in the Dasgupta review of February this year that economic activity has ignored and abused nature. Whether you're a rich farmer or you're a poor farmer in Bangladesh, everyone is abusing nature somehow. Do you think that's accepted?
Slowly. I think the fires this year all over the world, the floods that have happened have shaken humanity, and many, many people are becoming aware of this. But what's been very good here is that more than 100 nations have agreed to a policy of deforestation. So I see that that's an external thing that's a reflection of how it is people are treating nature.
Henrik Grape, do you think that your congregations, those you serve, really understand the enormity that the nature they've assumed will serve them can no longer be taken apart in the way that it has been?
yeah, I will say so, especially people living in Africa, Asia, there are member churches of World Council of Churches. What I would like to see that is not represented in the talks and on the decision making is that sometimes say we have to have 3 empty chairs at every room of decision representing the poor of the world. They have no voices. youth, coming generations, and nature itself. All those are voiceless and never often taken care of in decision. And when we are out on the streets today, it's to taking those voices so everybody can hear that we're screaming, because this is an emergent situation, and emergent situation takes very hard decision to make. And we as human have to understand we have hubris. We are the sin of hubris, we have to repent.
Gopal Patel, do your community understand that this is now an emergency, not for people somewhere else, but for them as well, and it's an existential crisis?
Yes, we did some polling earlier this year within the Hindu community globally, and overwhelming, about 80% said this is an urgent crisis that needs help and fixed immediately. And interestingly enough, they put the nature crisis, the biodiversity crisis, higher than the climate crisis, because people are recognizing that caring for nature is 30% of the climate solution. And so Hindus are really very concerned and stepping up, not just in India, but globally, with Christians and Muslims and Jewish people and all other faith traditions, to recognize that this needs to be addressed very, very urgently.
Let me put it to you. Obviously, everyone's looking for a big agreement at the end of next week. Let's hope it happens. But there's a lot happening. But ultimately, this is going to be about a change in human behavior. Not in 50 years, but probably 50 months. People have got to understand the enormity of the way of life they've actually had up to now simply is unsustainable. Can that be transmitted? Can that be embraced by your faith?
Definitely.
What can you do with your community to make them understand that this is not for other people, it's for them?
They're very, very aware that if we can simplify our lives and be less dependent on consumerism, then we are going to be able to save the resources of the planet and also nature itself. So far, nature has been giving with huge amount of abundance for millennia, but now it's time for us to respect nature and to see what can be the limits of growth. And limits of growth is not just an economic decision made by policymakers, but it's actually something which is my choice. What do I buy? What do I eat? What do I wear? Where do I go? What is the transportation that I use? All of this comes within that understanding.
That's critical.
Absolutely.
Let me just, your community as well, do they understand that they have got to truncate consumerism, truncate all they take for granted, if we're going to stand a chance of doing what has to be done in the next 5 to 8 years?
It takes some time to understand it, but we actually did this rehearsal with the COVID. We can in a very short time space, when we understand the urgency, change. And I hope that this kind of understanding, and we as faith communities, is playing an important part for the narrative. And it's not just about the danger that we're facing, it's also about we can create a much better life in a better future for future generations also. So it's not just about scaring people, it's also about to get some carrots, so go forward.
But even down to don't use your car, think of different ways of traveling, maybe not go on a holiday, maybe not buy meat, don't renew your clothes, don't buy new clothes. That kind of level of seismic change to the way of life, is that achievable, do you believe, through your community?
I think so. If it gives you some, other understanding of why you're doing it, you have to sort of get the narrative into you.
Gopal Patel, your community as well, if they're aware of it, are they prepared to make what we can call sacrifices?
Yeah, it's a sacrifice, but as Henrik is saying, it's a sacrifice. You give up the lower things for the higher things. So every tradition has this element of self-restraint or self-control. In Hinduism, we call it tapas or tapasya, which means I'll restrict what I do in order to gain something higher, something better in the world. And so I think we're seeing Hindus, and as Henrik said, in the pandemic, a lot of people stopping things, wanting to change the way they approach their career or their lifestyle or their health. People are making changes.
You're seeing it?
Definitely, without a doubt.
What do you say, quickly, last thought, to those who are still hesitating, who are dragging their anchors, who are laggards, who don't really want to accept the enormity? And listening to Johan Rockström from the Potsdam Institute a few hours ago, it is deeply chilling what we face. Quickly.
It's one family, we're in the same boat together, the water's coming in one end, but it's going to reach my feet tomorrow also.
Is the boat going to keep afloat?
We have to try and do that.
Henrik.
Yeah, come over to the winning side, because we are on the losing side doing this as we had done for the last century. The winning side is actually we are going to have a better future.
And we can win?
Yeah, if we really try. But we have a good way of struggle before us, but we know it's a good struggle. It's a good fight.
Gopal.
I'll say that we have to be our brothers and our sisters' keepers, and we all have a responsibility to look after each other and look after the planet itself. And I think that's the message everyone understands,
Yes.
and it's getting through, and those who aren't, eventually they'll come over to our side, because there will be no other side to be on.
Yeah.
What about those who take a rather more selfish view?
Well, there'll always be those people, and it's not that everyone will jump on board, but what I am saying is that the majority is moving in the right direction, and when the majority moves in that direction, that's where we'll be, and that's how we'll win this.
Gopal Patel from Bhumi Global and Reverend Henrik Grape, welcome. Thank you very much indeed from the World Council of Churches, and Sister Jayanti, UN representative for the Brahma Kumaris. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.